Next on AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show. Here's Brian O'Neill.
In segment one, it'll be in segment one, it'll be Dutchess County Executive Marc Molinaro, who's the Republican candidate for governor. In segment two, it'll be Assemblyman Phil Palmesano. Welcoming right now Marc Molinaro. Thank you so much for calling in.
I'm glad to be back. Thank you.
Well, Marc Molinaro, have you been following the Buffalo Billion trials at all?
Yes, I have. And all New Yorkers should, frankly. You know, this is clearly yet one more indication that people in and around this governor have been either emboldened or encouraged to trade favors for access to state resources, to trade campaign contributions, to get closer to the governor. And it's just it's one more signal, an indication of this, this pervasive culture of corruption that just frankly, this governor has been, unwilling to address and in many ways has made worse.
Now, for those who don't follow the Buffalo Billion trials closely, what it is the first one is over. The first trial is over. Joe Percoco, the governor's longtime close aide, was convicted on corruption charges, corruption and bribery, I believe. And then the second trial is going on now. The Buffalo Billion was a program that Governor Andrew Cuomo came up with. He was very pleased with it when it was launched to get... I don't think it was $1 billion exactly, but close to $1 billion into the Buffalo economy. And it's turned into a nightmare for Governor Andrew Cuomo with federal accusations against people both close to Governor Andrew Cuomo from being in the governor's office and associates outside the governor's office. What do you understand about the second trial? And not to get too into this, but what do you understand about the second trial? It was the head of SUNY Polytech, apparently doing some pay-to-play type stuff.
Yeah, put there by the governor. So it is a little bit more complex, but it's actually more damning. And really, the bottom line is follow the money. What occurred in this is that bids were rigged. So again, in order to access state dollars in this case, companies needed a bid, but the bids were rigged. So only a company, and again, this is the allegation, only companies with close ties to the governor could compete for the contracts. And ultimately, what the prosecutors are going forward with is that this person put in place, in essence, by the governor, claiming to have access to the governor. Reorganize these bids so that those who contribute to the governor would have the contract. So again, follow the money. It goes from political contributors to the governor's campaign to state bids being worded in a way that only those contributors can compete for the dollars. And this happens, by the way, too often because the governor has been given total discretion when it comes to spending these economic development dollars, which is why I'd put an end to it. If you do business with the state of New York, no longer would you be able to contribute to a political campaign or an elected official. If I'm governor, that has to come to an end because it's infecting the way it's infecting state government. And you know who loses? It's the industries and the communities. It's the communities of the southern tier that don't get to see job creation because somebody paid their way to influence policy. It's the business community that's trying to grow jobs where many just don't feel like they can compete because they don't have the dollars or the access to the governor. All of that needs to come to an end, and it's so infectious that, frankly, it's an embarrassment and really has created the most corrupted government in the state of in the country.
We're talking with a Republican candidate for governor, Marc Molinaro, on your Twitter page right now, and earlier this month, you posted a minister speaking on your behalf as to why you'd make a great governor for New York State. Do you mind if I play a quick clip of that, Marc?
I love her. Go ahead.
And the solution starts with Marc. We choose you. And because of you, we, the people, can believe again. Marc Molinaro, you are the man and of the hour for such a time as this. And as I close, just like in the game of football, Mark has been running for a long time. He's been running many yards, and he's been running with the end zone in mind.
So Reverend Smith there, Marc Molinaro.
Yeah, she's a great lady. She runs a home for victims of domestic violence. Got to know her years ago, believe in the work that she does. You know, and Dutchess County has been a partner with her responding to and protecting victims of domestic violence. You know, I couldn't have said it better myself in a way. I mean, it's a little bit humbling to listen to somebody suggest that, you know, destiny is calling. But I do think and know that there are too many New York families, farmers, individuals who are struggling too hard. And this government and this governor isn't listening. It's not responding well. The governor's made New York too expensive, and really this government too unaccountable. And you know, I'm not running to make myself feel good or to make friends. I'm running for governor because there are a lot of people who are struggling too hard, and they just need a governor and a government that listens and pays attention and puts aside partisanship to figure out how to solve problems facing people. That's why I'm running.
And you're not the only one who's running, Marc Molinaro. Syracuse Mayor Stephanie Miner, a Democrat in Syracuse, just jumped into the race earlier this week. She says she's running as an independent. And then you've got the Libertarian Larry Sharp, Democrat Cynthia Nixon. And aren't I leaving someone out? Isn't there another candidate too, Marc Molinaro?
Howie Hawkins is the Green Party candidate, and of course the current governor.
Right. What do you make of the entrance of Stephanie Miner into the race?
It's one more affirmation, one more confirmation that people on all sides of the political spectrum are tired of a governor who seems to put his political interest first. Is more interested in running for president. In fact, he said the most important priority was to defeat members of Congress. I just don't think that's the way you govern. In fact, I know it isn't. And, the best governors in the country have learned to put aside partisanship in a time of great, sort of toxic, it's a toxic environment. The good and successful governors in the country have put aside partisanship to solve problems. That's the kind of local elected official I've been. It's the candidate I am, and it's the governor I hope to be. Again, so whether it's on the left or the right, and I welcome the debate. People are fed up with a government and a governor not paying attention, and they don't seem to know the difference between right and wrong.
Talking to Dutchess County Executive Marc Molinaro, who's the Republican candidate for governor. One of the big things that you've promised to do if elected is get taxes down. Tell us about that, Marc.
Yeah, this state forces more state spending down onto local property taxpayers than any state in America. And while it's important to reform the entire tax structure in New York, it is most important we cut property taxes. We're going to roll out a fairly detailed plan that will bring sweeping reforms to the property tax system and drive down property taxes. It is what's driving too many families out of the state, too many young people out of the state. New York leads the nation in losing population to other parts of the country. And of course, it's keeping main streets all across the state from revitalizing again. So, New York's got to take responsibility for its spending, drive down costs, drive down spending, and in exchange for that, provide real property tax relief. And that's going to be a priority of my tenure should I serve as governor.
We're live with Dutchess County Executive Marc Molinaro. Marc, do you have a couple of minutes more before we switch over to Assemblyman Phil Palmesano?
Sure do.
Is there any talk of debates yet in the governor's race?
Not yet. The governor has a long history of not wanting to stand before a crowd and debate his opponents unless it's 20 people in a room. But I welcome it. I'd be just as happy to have a few home Nixon. I think the public deserves a real dialogue and to be able to ask.
Oh, you broke up there for a second. Are you still there, Marc Molinaro?
Can you hear me okay now?
Yes. Could you repeat what you just said? You broke up there at the end of your sentence there.
I welcome a debate and just welcome the conversation. And frankly, it's what's necessary in a democracy. And democracy is in short supply in Albany.
Marc Molinaro, Dutchess County Republican, running for governor against Governor Andrew Cuomo. Any websites you'd like to point our listeners to?
I say that one more time. I missed what you just said.
Sure thing. Any websites that you'd like to point our listeners to?
Yes, mine. MolinaroForNewYork.com, MolinaroForNY.com, or, of course, follow us on Twitter or Facebook. And feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to hear from folks who want to volunteer. And just as importantly, or more importantly, I'm always interested to hear from voters what's on their mind.
Marc Molinaro, thank you so much for calling in this morning.
You bet. I appreciate it. Anytime. I'll look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you very much. Dutchess County Executive Marc Molinaro. It's AM 1480 WLEA Newsmaker continues with Assemblyman Palmesano right after this.
Want your vehicle looking just like it did when you drove it out of the dealership? Then stop by RBS Auto Detailing on Canisteo and Pine Streets in Hornell. RBS Auto Detailing. The before and after photos of your vehicle won't come close to showing the great job they'll do for you. Cleaning, washing, and waxing. They can get your vehicle looking nice and new both inside and out. RBS Auto Detailing on the corner of Canisteo and Pine Streets in Hornell.
Did you know you can save up to 50% off at local businesses by going to our website fun921.com and click on Shop Certificate Auction Sales for gift certificates up to 50% off. Pay with a credit card or choose to pay cash in person, then come up to our station to pick up your certificates. Don't have a computer? Visit us here at the radio station on Ashbaugh Hill Road, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Now, here are some more of the sponsors we have certificates for. B&D Stoves, Big Papa's, Country View Crafts, Honeybee's Kitchen, Leon Lacey Professional Services, Patty's Pub and Grill, and Star Automotive Services. Come back often because we're always adding certificates. Thanks for saving money with us here at AM 1480 WLEA and Fun 92.1.
Checking in now with Assemblyman Phil Palmesano. And Assemblyman Palmesano, thank you so much for calling in.
Oh, Brian, it's good to be with you again.
Yeah, what happened there was, Assemblyman, I was going to have a press call with play back the press calls with the press conferences with Senator Gillibrand and Congressman Tom Reed. Unfortunately, neither of those press calls were long enough to fill the time, and I had set things up on that with that in mind to do a phoner with Marc Molinaro and play it back later. But then because I wasn't able to play back the press calls with Congressman Reed and Senator Gillibrand, Marc Molinaro called in right when I was getting Assemblyman Palmesano on the phone, and I thought, hey, we'll go live. I wasn't sure exactly what time Molinaro was going to call in. I told him sometime between 8 and 10, so that worked out well. Now on with Assemblyman Phil Palmesano. The legislative session is over, but there's unfinished business in Albany. Tell us about that.
Yes, Brian. Some of the reports are saying that the session ended with a whimper. I would agree with that because there is still some unfinished business. Unfortunately, with the politics in Albany, there are things that kind of got held hostage and got delayed and not done as part of the end of session negotiations that got caught up in some of those issues. I'll give you one example for one of our bills that was really important to Tom O'Meara and myself. Was where we had legislation and we're trying to stop a trash incinerator project from being developed up in the Finger Lakes that has a lot of opposition. We've been working in a bipartisan way with our colleagues on this legislation that would stop this project from happening. That got caught up in these last-minute negotiations over other key issues that they were trying to do. It's like the issues with the speed cameras in New York City. All these issues got tied together. Local bills that are important to some local municipalities, like mortgage recording tax type things, but just some things that wouldn't get a lot of headlines but are important to local municipalities, are all tied up in these negotiations that are still have to be taken into account. So I would expect that we're going to get called back to Albany at some point to finish some of this stuff. We're going to need to because we can't leave things like that. And personally, I think probably one of the biggest it's outstanding issues, and I know Marc Molinaro talked about this, is the ethics reform and more transparency with these the Calieros trial going on. You think of the Joe Percoco conviction, some of the Buffalo Billion trying these things.
And these are the 2 Buffalo Billion trials that you're talking about.
Correct. Yeah, we need to have more transparency in our economic development programs, and that's one of the things we've been pushing for towards the end of session. That we had a press conference last week. The fact that there's bipartisan legislation that passed even the state Senate. These bills are sponsored by Democrats in the state assembly. Procurement Accountability Integrity Act, and then also a database of deals which would list all these be a database of all these deals that are done, so it's transparent to the voters and to taxpayers what's being done. You know, I think that's something it's more than important and needs to be addressed. The Accountability Act would allow the comptroller to come in and have some authority over these deals, as far as having more transparency and accountability to sign off on how these procurement deals. These are the things that you see people going to court for right now in the Cuomo administration. That's what we need to have, more transparency and accountability in our economic development laws. And if we can't do things like that, how are we supposed to restore trust and confidence in our state government back to the taxpayers and let them know we're handling their resources wisely? I think that's the frustration that I share and a lot of my colleagues, that we couldn't get that done. The governor obviously doesn't want any more transparency in this issue. I know this is something Marc Molinaro has been talking about consistently, and I'm glad you had a chance to have Marc on this morning, and the listeners got to listen to Marc. He's a great guy, and I think he'd be a great governor for our state. We've had him in the area recently, and he's going to continue to come back to our area. I'm looking forward to continue being out there to campaign for Marc Molinaro. He's a man of character. He's got a great vision, and he's got great ideas that would help take this state in the right direction. And I'm so glad you had a chance to talk to him, and your listeners had a chance to hear him this morning.
Assemblyman Palmesano, did you, in the legislative session, was there anything that you got through or anything that was passed that you were a co-sponsor of, that you were in favor of?
Yes, I mean, there's legislation out there that we were looking at. You know, there are some things that were done relative to, obviously, there's child trafficking laws that were passed that we were able to get done. Amy Pond, she's a Democratic sponsor in the House, that she was pushing. There are some other things that we were able to get done. Obviously, worked with Assemblyman Joe Morelli on some legislation that he helped us with, that helped with our state park. That's going to be something that's going to help to revitalize our state park. A couple of our state parks up in the Finger Lakes. You know, his actions on those types of things are very important. I was happy earlier in the session when we had the legislation. That's one of the things that I was hoping we can get an agreement on with the Senate and the governor. The legislation that would decouple these standardized tests from our teachers' APPR evaluations. I don't think these standardized tests. We got to get away from that overemphasis on these standardized, high-stakes standardized tests. I don't think that should be a part of the evaluations of our teachers in our schools, because I don't think a standardized test measures the development and relationship between that student and that teacher in the classroom. These tests are sometimes done. Some of these teachers are evaluated on some of these tests that have nothing to do with the area they even teach, which is ridiculous. I think we need to decouple this from the evaluation process, and that's something I'm a co-sponsor of, that we were able to pass early in the session, and I'm hopeful that that's one of those issues that we will get to address in the future, because I think it's long overdue that we do this issue, because this overemphasis on state testing for our kids is something that's been an issue that I've been frustrated with for a long time. I think we want evaluations for our teachers, but we want it to be local control, so people who are familiar with the school, the kids, the teachers, understand the way the dynamics of that classroom and that school. We don't need outside independent evaluators coming in who have no understanding of the school. They just sit in the classroom for 10 minutes and say, "Oh, okay, this teacher is good or not." I don't think that's the way it works. I think we need to have our people who are working in our schools doing those types of evaluations, and I don't think it should be. And I definitely think we need to delink these state standardized tests from the evaluation process for our teachers. So that was legislation that I co-sponsored that passed, that I was happy to, and hopefully we can get a final agreement on that issue before before as these talks continue on other outstanding issues.
As you were answering that question, I noticed an email came in from the governor's press office, and it says Governor Cuomo has written an op-ed in the is it the New York Times? Yes, in the New York Times, saying that he's going to move forward with his lawsuit against the Trump administration because of the separation of the children from their parents at the border. Your thoughts on that move by Governor Cuomo, Assemblyman Palmesano?
Listen, I'm not surprised at anything the governor does to try to get headlines for himself dealing with the Trump administration. Is in my opinion, is no surprise. There's no secret that he's going to run for president. He's always trying to, whether it's this or the tax issue earlier in the year. The fact is, I know the Trump administration put out an order yesterday saying that they were going to stop separate, that these families wouldn't be separated. As my understanding, these policies go back even to the Obama era. And
I've heard Obama and George W. Bush both were doing this.
Yes, but you just didn't have. And when I say the media, I mean the national type of.
Oh, sure, the national or mainstream or liberal press, whatever you want to call them.
Yep, and you didn't see the Democrats who were out there doing press conferences. You didn't see them complaining about President Obama during that time. Obviously, I think this is another reason why we have to look at our immigration policies. And hopefully, look at some comprehensive immigration reform. I know there's some things that need to get done. Obviously from the DACA for our dreamer kids that are here. I know that's something that still needs to be done. And also, obviously, looking at ways to stop the illegal immigration problem that's continues to happen in our country. But I don't, Governor Cuomo is always looking for attentions and headlines to get for himself, and trying to act like he's the fighter against President Trump. And I think it's no secret that I think most people recognize that, yeah, he's running for governor this year, but then after that, I think he's going to make a pivot and run for president. Whatever the policy may be, he's always out there. It was a tax policy earlier in the year. Now it's this, and I'm sure there's going to be more as things continue to move further.
We're out of time. Thank you so much, Assemblyman Phil Palmesano, for calling in.
Oh, my pleasure, Brian. It's always great to be with you. And hello to all your listeners.